We see an opportunity to do what's right, to change business as usual, to become business as it should be, where people don't just live and work, they thrive. To do that, Colliers is committing to elevate the way we do business, to elevate the built environment. We will minimize environmental impacts in our own operations and through the services we provide our clients. We will increase diversity and inclusion in Colliers and across our procurement practices to create an atmosphere welcoming of diverse ideas and perspectives. We will promote health and well-being in our operations and through our client services to help improve lives. Together, we will elevate the built environment and build better for our collective future. For ourselves, for our clients, for our communities, for the world.
The Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, or DHSUD, is the primary government entity responsible for the management of housing, human settlement, and urban development. It was created on February 14, 2019 by virtue of Republic Act 11201. The department is a sole and main planning and policymaking, regulatory, program coordination, and performance monitoring entity for all housing, human settlement, and urban development concerns, primarily focusing on the access to and the affordability of basic human needs. RA 11201 consolidated the functions of the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board and the Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council to become DHSUD, except for adjudication, which is now handled by its attached agency, the Human Settlements Adjudication Commission. The DHSUD also exercises oversight functions on its attached agencies or key shelter agencies, namely the National Housing Authority, which acts as the country's primary shelter production arm, the Home Development Mutual Fund or Pag-ibig Fund, which focuses on National Savings Program and affordable shelter financing for Filipino workers, the Social Housing Finance Corporation, which undertakes social housing programs catering to the formal and informal settlers belonging to the low-income bracket, and the National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, which ensures the availability of affordable housing loans to finance home buyers through secondary market for home mortgages. It has 3 bureaus that primarily perform policy development, regulatory functions, and advisory roles. The Environmental, Land Use and Urban Planning and Development Bureau, which performs human settlements planning-related functions, including formulation of planning guidelines, national urban development policies and programs, technical assistance to relevant stakeholders, and land use monitoring. The Housing and Real Estate Development Regulation Bureau, which regulates the development of subdivision and condominium and other real estate projects, including the practice of real estate service by brokers and salespersons through the formulation, promulgation, and imposition of administrative fines and penalties pursuant to Presidential Decree 957 and Batas Pambansa 220, and the Homeowners Association and Community Development Bureau that formulates policies and programs to be implemented by the regional offices, monitors proper implementation of the approved policies and programs, and capacitates regional offices in empowering the HOAs within their respective jurisdictions. The department's operations are complemented by 1 technical service, the Public Housing and Human Settlement Service, and 7 support services. It has 16 regional offices strategically located nationwide to cater to the needs in the localities. Guided by dynamism, honesty, service excellence, unity of purpose, and dedication, the DHSUD will move forward toward its vision of adequate and affordable housing, inclusive human settlements, and well-planned communities for every Filipino family.
The Wallace Business Forum is a 30-year-old think tank that provides a valuable link between the country's top business leaders and the leaders of government. It helps CEOs to understand the environment with which they must operate through a series of publications and meetings that access the business, political and economic environment and predict where we may go. WBF is considered one of the most authoritative, independent sources of information and assistance in understanding in the Philippines. We tell it like it is.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Colliers' first quarter 2022 property market briefing. It seems like it was only yesterday when we held our last briefing in early February. A lot has happened since then, and certainly a lot of reasons to be more optimistic about the Philippine real estate sector. And we're very excited to share with you our latest data and insights on the Philippine real estate market. Today's webinar will cover the performance of the office, residential, and retail sectors for the first quarter of this year. I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot today, which hopefully will help us make better and informed business decisions this coming months and beyond 2022. But before anything else, let us first acknowledge our partners who made this webinar possible. The Department of Human Development, Human Settlements and Urban Development, the Australia-New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the Wallace Business Forum, the ABS-CBN News Channel, the Philippine Daily Inquirer through Inquirer Property, the Philippine Star, Business World, and Business Mirror. I'm Maricris Sarino-Joson, Colliers Director and Head of Office Services Landlord Representation. I will be your host and moderator for today. I again encourage everyone to stay for the open forum at the end of the presentations where Colliers experts will be present to answer any of your questions you may have regarding the property market. You may also send your questions through the chat box. If you want to receive copies of our speakers' presentations, please do not leave a message at the chat box. Instead, send us an email at philippines.marcom@colliers.com and our team will reach out to you. We'll be sharing our Q1 2022 property reports, which you may download via the links we will send through the chat box. You'll also be able to access these reports on colliers.com and watch out for official announcement on our social media accounts. So please make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So with that, let's begin our webinar. Our team has meticulously organized data from January to March of this year. Of course, this data will mean more whether experts' insights and recommendations will help us make better and informed business decisions and respond to changing and challenging times ahead. During our last briefing, we reported annual office transactions increasing 18% year-on-year, more than 600,000 square meters of office space being completed in 2021, an office vacancy of 15.7% at the end of 2021. But as more green and sustainable buildings are completed, we remain optimistic that office deals will slowly pick up this year as occupiers have more opportunities to lease at more cost-effective rates. We're also pleased with the recent economic stimulus measures instituted, such as the CREATE Law, the amendments made to the Foreign Investment Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and the Public Service Act, plus Executive Order 166, which is a 10-point policy agenda to accelerate and sustain economic recovery post-pandemic. All of these, we believe, will help the Philippines attract more foreign investors. In the residential sector, we reported the delivery of almost 9,000 condo units in Metro Manila in 2021, and that supply will grow by 17% in 2024 compared to 2021. We also reported the vacancy rates are starting to ease in some submarkets and projected to continue to decline in 2022. And now that virtually all COVID-19 restrictions have been eased, are we seeing recovery finally being sustained? Is 2022 the year we'll finally turn a new leaf? We hope to answer these and more in this webinar. So I'm now seeing many questions in our chat box. I'm sure speakers and panelists can't wait to answer these, so let me introduce them. First is Colliers Managing Director Richard Raymundo. Morning, Rich.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Senior Director of Advisory Services, Theresa Teodoro. Morning, Tim.
Hi, good morning.
Director for Capital Markets and Investment Services, Paul Chua.
Hi,
Morning,
morning
Paul
everyone.
C. And Senior Director of Valuation Services, Paul Vincent Ramirez. Good morning, Paul. And Senior Director for Office Services, Tenant Representation. Let me call back Dom Fredrick Andaya. Okay, so let's check our questions from our viewers today. Okay, Tim, for the first question, residential condo market forecast. Can you also share affordable and mid-income residential condo in Metro Manila? This is from Joel Magbitang of Mitsubishi.
Well, first quarter sales were better compared to last quarter. So we did 3,000 versus the 2,600. So hopefully this momentum continues throughout the year. The good thing about it is the sales are a mix also from, newly launched projects newly launched projects only accounted for 10% of the sales this year. The rest were already previously launched projects. So looked like a lot of areas are showing improved sales in terms of the affordable and mid-income. So they were also the top performers for first quarter, consistent also with what we saw in the second half of last year. So we expect these segments to still be top performers, to continue to perform well for the rest of the year. Although, of course, it's still very highly competitive in Metro Manila condominium market. So affordability is still key, and we'll probably still see developers offering, very flexible payment terms and promotions.
Thank you, Tim. For Joey and Dom, are there any signs of oversupply from the retail and office sectors? If yes, could this lead to a slowdown in the completion of supply this year and next year? This is from Eloise Manel of Cemex Philippines.
Muna, Joey.
Okay, let me start. For retail, no oversupply. We're projecting again take 15,000 square meters annually 2022 to 2024. So a slight drop from 255,000 that we originally estimated. So definitely no oversupply in terms of new retail space across Metro Manila. There were some delays. Based on our scans, about 3 to 6 month delay from their original completion, but still a pretty healthy pipeline, especially now that we're seeing greater consumer traffic. So I think it's just enough to welcome a greater foot traffic within malls, as well as to prepare for the revenge shopping and dining of a lot of Filipino shoppers.
Yeah, so for office, so we said earlier that we've entered a phase where the increase in the vacancy is already supply driven. So that means there's really oversupply. But and that is at least for 2022, where we'll see more than 800,000 square meters of spaces that will be completed. But we have seen adjustments coming from developers already for the supply coming in 2023 onwards. So initially we were expecting 700 and above, but that already reduced to around the 500 to 600 square meter level, which is the sustainable or the market size prior to the POGO days. So I think that's the correct or the sustainable annual supply figures. But of course, please consider also the amount of space that are currently available, which is more than 2 million square meters. So I still expect more adjustments in terms of the supply moving forward to address the rising vacancy.
Thanks, Dom and Joey. For Joey, the rise of the North, you mentioned this in your presentation. What about the South? This is from Albert Miterge of Converge ICT Philippines.
Are we talking about South Luzon? Well, we already see substantial completion of infrastructure projects in South. And again, if you look at our previous surveys, so Laguna, Cavite, and Batangas would usually stand out. I think one reason why we highlighted North is because somehow in terms of infrastructure completion, we saw delays in the development of projects in the North. So it's only now that we saw completion of Skyway 3, further development of NLEX, and then expansion of Clark Airport, and only presents a good opportunity, a good time for developers to start land banking and developing new condominium units. That's why we now see more developers gravitating towards North. Of course, more developers have been well established already in the South, talking about the likes of Laguna, Cavite, as well as Batangas.
Thank you, Joey. For Dom, can you provide key aspects or updates on work from home extension being petitioned by PEZA with regard to the FIRB order? I think this was covered during the presentation, but Dom can add more. This is from Hill of KMC Solutions.
Hi, Hill. So yes, so PEZA found a way how to allow the 30% work from home or working outside of PEZA zones through the existing law, which provides that PEZA registered business enterprises should have revenues, 70% of their revenues should be export driven. So that's how they justified it, and it's until September 12, 2022, in line with the expiry of the declaration of the national emergency. No, so but again, that has tax implications with respect to, of course, the 5% gross income tax as well as VAT. I mean, last week I think I've seen a memorandum issued by an announcement issued by PESA with respect to BIR taxing the component of RBEs, PESA RBEs that are not export oriented. So those are the things that they need to consider because of that ruling.
Another question from Tisha Cueva of Eaton Properties. Any updates on Pogo market? Do you think there really will be a comeback for Pogo?
Our position remains the same as the last property briefing. I think it's gonna be how the China-Philippine relationship will be moving forward, because it's this Chinese Pogo industry operates by they're being tolerated by the Chinese government. So let's see how that works after the elections.
Thanks, Tom. Another question from Jean Burwell of PNB. What is the outlook for the office sector given that hybrid work or work from anywhere is here, and smaller footprint in terms of square meter of occupiers, with amount of supply also coming in, almost 900,000. Outlook for the office sector in the Philippines and Metro Manila?
Yes, so we still expect vacancy to increase, and you're correct. Hybrid work model would remain, and that's causing many occupiers to right size. That means they're reducing their space because of the application of the hybrid work model. So I think that's going to continue. But my personal take on this is like it's going to be like a fashion trend. There will be issues eventually that will be encountered by occupiers in the implementation of the hybrid work. So that's going to happen over the next, say, 12, 24, 36 months until such time that they're able to figure out the right balance in terms of the work in the office component and then work anywhere component. But I think my gut feel is that there's going to be a greater percentage of workers working in the office.
Thanks, Tom. Joey from David Dorsey of Phoenix. In your opinion, how would the rental property market fare in the coming months?
Well, similar to my presentation earlier, we're likely to see some recovery for the rental market, secondary market in Metro Manila starting 2022. So that's between 1 to 2% increase in rents from 2022 to 2024. But again, that is a much slower increase compared to increase in rents that we saw 2017, 2018, 2019 at the height of the Pogo demand in Metro Manila. But again, that is an improvement nonetheless compared to correction in rents that we saw 2020 and 2021 at the height of the pandemic, which would range from 15 to 19% correction. And then similar to the presentation earlier, the slide I showed you, wherein we look at the Bay Area Makati for studios, one-bedders, there'd be about 20 to 34% correction in rents. But now that more people are returning to office, in fact, we are keenly monitoring these projects, and now we're seeing more queries. In fact, this is also supported by a recent report released by Moody. So definitely there will be an improvement in lease rates for the remainder of 2022, but it will be much slower. We've yet to really recover lost ground, especially at the height of the Pogo demand in 2017 to 2019.
Thank you, Joey. So in line with the remainder of 2022, a question from Inguilo and Carnita Freebap. What are the major drivers of growth are we looking at for the remainder of 2022 for the office and residential sector? So Dom, Joey, or Tim, any of you guys can answer this question. Drivers of growth for the remainder of 2022.
Tim, do you want to
Maybe I'll
start?
start for the residential, yeah. Well, for drivers for growth for residential, I think Joey shared the slide earlier, no, but OFWs continue to be the major market, and the increasing remittances show the resiliency of this market. Then, of course, we're also seeing the improving office transactions, the return to office trends, improving business outlook. This may start peak investor interest again, though we still up to wait and see if this movement is sustained or continues to gain momentum. No? In terms of the areas where the position within Metro Manila, the fringe areas near the CBDs continue to show good performance, such as Pasig, Alabang, Las Piñas, Quezon City. But in outside Metro Manila, of course, Cavite and Laguna are quite interesting. They continue to, they're able to capture the Metro Manila market. Usually for the house and lot segments, this would be the affordable and economic segments. Although those areas are also able to capture the luxury for the lot owning segment. So that's for the residential. Turn it over to Dom.
Hello. So yeah, drivers for growth. Well, aside from those mentioned, like the economic stimulus measures, the Public Service Act or Investment Act, etc. In terms of real demand, we see rebound coming from the outsourcing sector. It still remains to be one, or if not the most effective way on how companies elsewhere, like the United States, could easily recover from the pandemic. We see also that green and sustainable features of buildings, I'm not talking about upcoming, but also existing, to drive office moves coming from the various occupiers. We're also seeing that the intention of occupiers to refresh and do major renovations to be driving office transactions. So yeah, a lot of studies are being done right now, evaluation assessment in relation to how their employees perceive the office, the right balance in terms of the hybrid work model. So these are ongoing, and decisions are being taken in line with the upcoming lease expiries. So our advice to occupiers is that review their leases. It's really better to start the studies at least 12 months, better if more than 12 months before a lease expiry, so that you'll be able to have a lot of time figuring out what's going to work for you and trigger the decision, or do the decision as soon as possible, and then do the office move closer to your lease expiry.
Thank you, Tim and Joey. Joey, for the secondary real estate selling prices, how did it perform during this quarter? This is from Daniel Baloalo of PIK Group for the secondary real estate selling prices, Joey. Joey, you're on mute.
Sorry. Again, for the secondary real estate market, we saw an improvement first quarter of 2022. This is an improvement from the combined 15% contraction or correction that we saw in 2020 and then 2021. So moving forward, we're likely to see an improvement, further improvement of prices for the secondary market, which should start latter half of 2022. But it's good that we finally saw prices climbing, although at a much slower pace for the first quarter of 2022.
Another question from Daniel of PIK Group. Tim, which housing segments do you think will perform this year? Performance of selling prices by segment and cities in NCR.
Well, I already mentioned earlier about the three key locations, Pasig, Alabang, and Quezon City. Pasig and Alabang Their sales were dominated by the mid-income segment. In QC, it was a mix because there was a newly launched upscale project there, so that did well. But also the other top performer segment in that area was the affordable segment. So those were the segments for the three locations. Although we'd also like to state that although mid-income and affordable is the top performer, we saw improved sales across all of the different segments.
So Tim, what about provinces, top five provinces outside NCR that will be growth centers this 2020, 2022 and beyond?
Well, Cavite and Laguna continue to show strong activity because of the spillover from Metro Manila, but Batangas can be the next area to emerge also because of all the infrastructure developments, improving connectivity through Cavite Laguna area and of course Metro Manila. Then of course there's Bulacan with the emerging airport and the presence of new estate developments by major developer. And of course Pampanga. Pampanga is a very strong location. It has a lot of components there, such as the combination of different infrastructure projects that are present and being completed, several private developer-led master plan developments, and all of that parang helps create momentum also for that area. So those are the 5 areas for me.
Thank you, Tim. Dom, a question from Lana Revisita of Santa Fe Moving and Relocation. What are the considerations in making the decision of work from home and how PEZA limits them on the work from home and impact to stakeholders, probably cost as well, Dom, for occupiers in PEZA that are being confined to the work from home percentage?
Yeah, the primary consideration is, of course, the employees. You know, what's really interesting right now, during and after the pandemic, is the focus of companies with on humans, both employees and customers. So that's really the primary driver on why companies are doing or implementing the work from home, or not really work from home. It's really hybrid or work from anywhere. So that's the main driver. Others would be, of course, the readiness of companies in terms of the technology. Are they using desktops versus laptops? Do they have the right software applications to be used? And then what kind of functions can they migrate into a hybrid work model? So these are things that are being considered. Aside, of course, from the cost implications, because even if, say, they reduce their office footprint in relation to this hybrid work model, the work from home still has cost implications. Companies would shoulder or subsidize home furniture, utilities, internet, etc. Right? So there are other things, company policies, guidelines, company culture, and I think what's gonna really impact the right balance in terms of this hybrid work model would be the company culture and engagement moving forward, and that's where companies would have issues moving forward.
Thank you, Dom. I think Mike Lindro, Dom also answered the question about really BPOs prioritizing employee experience more than anything during these challenging times. Dom, another question: have you seen BPOs give up incentives because of this limitation?
Yes. So when they were forced, and even prior to the expiry of that 90-10 allowance or the 100% allowance, companies have started studying the PEZA and PEZA, PEZA BOI 12 months prior to that. And yeah, many companies really opted to just be a regular corporation. In fact, I've spoken to one BPO company which has 800 to 1,000 employees, and they just opted to move out of PEZA and just pay 25% corporate income tax. And I think the impact to them on an annual basis is just 5 million. So 5 million versus the welfare of employees. So those are the things that companies are really looking into right now. And for third-party BPOs, that conversations are happening between and among them, together with their end users, to really look into this and see the cost implications. And if the cost implications are acceptable to the BPO, third-party BPOs and the end users, then I think they will prefer doing the hybrid work model.
Yeah, Tom, talking about employees being the center and the heart of every organization, a question from Kanye, are you seeing movement among occupiers relocating to green buildings?
Yes. So I think I started the presentation claiming that we are noticing more transactions happening in better quality buildings, grade A, especially those with green and sustainable certifications. So definitely there's a movement towards that, and not only about the buildings now, even the inside the lease premises. So there's that well certification for fit out, and every time together with our project management headed by Roldan Lutizon, whenever we talk to clients about well certification of fit outs, that we see this is key decision makers of companies really become more active in terms of the discussions, because that's how they see their companies or see their employees being encouraged to go back to
Thanks,
the
Tom.
office.
Paul C. from Mauro Era, given the high office vacancies, there are viable market for developers offering office spaces for sale. Paul C.
Meaning those that are for lease and then they're gonna sell it. I don't
Yes.
think it's happening at the moment, because usually prior to any development, it's either a strategy where you sell it, or it's a leasing strategy where you lease it out. So it will take a very large instance where they say they will probably start giving up on their development. For example, if there are no takers on their leases. But at the moment, I'm not seeing this strategy to be happening in the market. So we'll see. I think based on the results of what happened during the first quarter, we are seeing take-ups going up. So hopefully this will eventually bring us back to pre-pandemic levels.
Thank you, Paul C. Paul R. Now that the construction of the new Manila airport is underway, do you expect land values in nearby areas to increase soon? Paul R.
Yeah, we have actually seen it, and based on Joey's report on the Rise of the North, we actually saw movement and development in that area, and any activity, infrastructure, or development will have an impact on the land values in that area. So yes, we will see increase in land values.
Thank you, Paul R. Paul C. again from Venice D. How about Quezon Province and Calabarzon? What's your forecast there, since there's a plan to build the PEZA Eco Zone in the province?
I think any zones that will be PEZA certified would definitely be a good location for any locators. So if you're talking about who are the potential clients, obviously logistics would still be one. Cold storage, it's also starting to really be a very viable subsegment of the industrial sector here in the Philippines. Another one would be data centers. So I think there are a lot of potential locators in PEZA proclaimed areas. So new developments would certainly be beneficial to the location on where it will be built.
Thank you, Paul. Joey from Jetrom Lavatorio, is horizontal properties outside Metro Manila a better option right now for property investor compared to investing in vertical projects for flipping?
I wouldn't say a better option, because if you are to acquire, say, a vertical property in Metro Manila, of course you have a different purpose, different reason why you're buying a vertical unit in Metro Manila. Of course, if the projects are in Metro Manila, mostly these are investment driven. Most of the decisions are based because you want to flip it, because you want to resell it, capitalize on the potential increase in prices. So we see more end users, in fact, gravitating outside of Metro Manila and choosing horizontal and house and lot projects. So again, it depends on how will you use it. Will you be flipping it? Will you be reselling it after a few years, or will you be the one to live in this residential unit, or are you buying as an end user?
Thank you, Joey. Tim, from Jonathan Martinez, for the residential sector, have you seen further decline in down payments for condos? For Bulacan residential take-up, is the negative figure sales cancellation?
Well, in terms of down payment, yes, we've seen it go down. So we've seen a lot of 15% when before it was 20%. But for some of the projects that we've monitored, they've also started to, go back to the 20%. But for most, we're still seeing 15% down payment. And then for the Bulacan, the negative figure, yes, that would be for backouts, cancellations.
Joey, Victor, from Victor Manarang, there seems to be increased secondary market uptake of upscale and luxury residential lots. What's driving this?
Upscale and
Luxury residential lots.
Well, it's a supply-driven demand, especially when you talk about Pampanga. Remember the slide I showed earlier, most of the launches are still coming from your luxury and upscale, whether it's lot only or house and lot. And these are mostly starting at 6 million pesos per unit. So most of the supply is still coming from this upscale and luxury segment. So as a result, most of the take-up, much of the demand still coming from this segment, upscale and luxury. It's really a supply-driven demand market at this point.
Yeah, for Richard, talking about upscale luxury demand, for retail, are we seeing increased positive signals also for increased sales for this upscale luxury brands, Richard?
I think retail will be one of the fastest rebound that you're going to see in Philippine property. We're already seeing foot traffic in malls returning 60-70% of pre-pandemic. That's a very good sign. The next thing that needs to recover is probably dwell time. It's getting there. It's not as bad as during the peak COVID periods. And luxury segment is one of those that is doing very well. Again, if you look at Greenbelt 3 with all the new LVMH brands that have opened, some of the brands we didn't have before. Louis Vuitton is a lot bigger than the older space. Then you have Fendi and Kenzo and all of that. Celine is building their space. It's a positive, and this is what Joey mentioned about revenge shopping. A lot of pent up demand from people who didn't travel abroad and shopped abroad are actually spending it here. So that's a good sign.
Thank you, Richard. Joey, from Alvin Azur, you showed earlier in your slide that condo performance in Pampanga area is more on upscale and luxury properties. Aside from intra development, what are the other reasons why upscale properties are performing well in Pampanga?
Similar to my response earlier, because much of the supply really is coming from the upscale luxury projects. So you have the likes of Rockwell, for example, launching its Manansala project second half of 2021. So much of the demand is still coming from this segment, and that is mainly because much of the supply is also being launched from these upscale and luxury segments. You also have a boutique and homegrown Pampanga-based developers that are launching projects in Angeles City, for example, and these would range from 6 to 8 million pesos per unit, and this would still fall within your upscale and luxury price segment. So not surprising to see these segments dominating in Pampanga condo market.
Thank you, Joey. For our last question, Dom, from Gabby Abril. There are cities outside Metro Manila that are emerging as new BPO IT hubs. What should property developers' top priority in terms of office commercial developments for this new IT hubs to stand out?
Hi, Gabby. So Yes, so there's movement towards that. BPOs are really diversifying, establishing smaller offices close to where talent is available. So for developers, yeah, that's a challenge in some of the locations. Like we are being asked to provide spaces, say in Bataan, but of course, there's really none available immediately. That is, of course, at least acceptable. Uh, that is of acceptable quality to BPOs, right? But for developers, what we can say is that, yeah, look at at least a minimum compliance with aircon, backup power, warm cell condition, and then be realistic in terms of pricing, simply because BPOs would really look at the cost differential between Metro Manila and another location, which is a provincial location. So be realistic in terms of that, because whenever we submit options with clients and then we say 600, 700, they see a 600, 700 figures, they'd be turned off almost immediately. So yeah, be realistic in terms of pricing. At the same time, look into the opportunity of having the BPOs within your within your locality. That's one, and within your property, because the BPO operation would feed into other property uses like the retail, food, etc., which you can profit on immediately.
Thanks, Dom. Thank you to our speakers and panelists from Colliers, Joey Roy Bondoc, Dom Fredrick Andaya, Teodoro, Paul Chua, Paul Ramirez, and Richard Raymundo, for shedding light on the current landscape of the real estate sector and providing us with useful insights and recommendations as we face exciting months ahead. We would like to once again thank our event partners, the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, the Australia-New Zealand Chamber of the Philippines, the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the Wallace Business Forum, the ABS-CBN News Channel, the Philippine Daily Inquirer through Inquirer Property, Philippine Star, the Business World, and Business Mirror. And to officially close our program, let's hear our final remarks from our Managing Director, Richard Raymundo.
Thanks, Chris. So what an exciting quarter for the property sector. So we have turned the corner in the office segment, as net take-up has now been recorded as positive after 7 quarters of negative take-up. Led by the BPO segment, the tenants market has given opportunity for office tenants to acquire space at a favorable lease rate. Retail, as I've said, will be the fastest rebound in the property segment. One of the worst hit, the low infection numbers and ease restrictions has meant that mall traffic and consequently sales are returning to pre-pandemic levels. Residential has logged slow condominium sales growth, but there are encouraging signs in the lots and house and lot segments where demand remains robust. So while challenges remain, there are opportunities in the market. Developers and investors would need to pivot from traditional structures and terms, but good opportunities remain for those bold enough. Thank you for attending our briefing today. Here's hoping that the nascent recovery that we are seeing would persist throughout the year. Keep well and do not forget to vote in the upcoming elections. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to everyone who joined our webinar today. You're welcome to reach out to any of our team if you have further questions, if you would like to receive more information on the office, residential, and retail sectors. If you'd like to stay updated on the latest news and insights in the Philippine property sector, please visit our Colliers websites, colliers.com, and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you'd like to hear more from Joey, he has a regular column in the Philippine Daily Inquirer called Colliers Review. It comes out every Saturday in the newspaper's property section. Colliers also has a regular column in the business world called Colliers Insights and the Philippine Star called Colliers Outlook. So please make sure to get copies of these newspapers as well. And finally, tune in to Colliers Insight podcast hosted by none other than Joey, which is available on Spotify. New episodes are released twice a month. And please don't forget our upcoming events. This May 28th, Saturday, please drop by Central Bark Park in BGC for Colliers Woofy Hour, a day of fun with your furry family members. This fun activity is between 4 and 6 p.m. So make sure to be there and receive freebies from Colliers. Then on June 29, 2 p.m., we'll organize Better Together, Embracing Office Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which will feature Oliver Baxter of Miller Knoll. So more details will follow. So once again, on behalf of Colliers, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next market briefing. We hope that as things get better, we will finally see each other again in person to a face-to-face event very soon. Goodbye, everyone. Have a fantastic day.